got the exact kind of guy that they need in Brogdon, who's someone who, like, you don't necessarily want him to be your number one point guard, but you put him on a team with a bunch of good playmakers, and he's the ultimate fit for this team. And then Gallinari, who it's like they just needed somebody that, like, when they needed somebody to go get a bucket getter, somebody that can just hit shots that are tightly contested and get on a heater. They definitely wanted one of those guys, and only get him for like 6.5 mil. It's good business. I like it. Even if he sucks on defense at this point of his career, he is a smart, composed player who I know Gallinari only averages 2 assists a game, but that dude knows how to move the ball. He makes
Mhm.
creative passes. He makes good reads. He can get out of a double team pretty decently. He can obviously hit a shot anywhere you want him to. Like that dude can hit any kind of shot you want. Like Brad did good business, and it's not done. They're gonna get another center. I don't think Kamagale is just going to be like they're just going to add him onto the roster and be like we're set at backup center. I think that everything we've seen so far indicates to me they're going to pay more tax to get another, maybe a little bit more than Bettman. Like, I reported about how they're still exploring using the Fournier TPE. I tried to immediately explain in the article so it was very clear for the aggregators. They're not going to trade for another person making 17 million.
Sure.
If they do, they're probably sending out some other salary because I talked to Danny LaRue, our cap expert at The Athletic, about it. Like, it would cost like $75 million to trade for another player making that much money. They're not going to do that. It's not worth it. Like, you don't need it. So I think they're probably going to target a center that could pop out from the Donovan Mitchell deal if it goes down, from a Kevin Durant deal if it goes down, whatever other trade could happen where teams have to start moving around, especially because it sounds like there could be some 3 to 14 deals possibly brewing around those things. Like the Celtics might have a chance to snag somebody that just makes like $3 or $4 million to be that 10th man to kind of replace what Theis was doing.
So of there are a lot of things that you said right there that I want to react to. We'll kind of bounce around, but just to go with the most recent, the
That
TPE.
always happens when we talk.
It
Like,
it,
I'll
it
say the
does.
opening
And
statement. It's like 10 minutes. You're like, all right, I got like 6 things I want to say to that.
yeah, no,
That's what I do.
I've,
That's what we do on Celtics Beat.
I've made a laundry list of items here that I'd like to review. Well, let's talk about the TPE though, because obviously it is top of mind. I mean, as we're sitting here on a Friday, this thing, at least the Evan Fournier TPE, is as we've come to refer to it, worth 17 million and change, expires in 3 days. So time is running thin, obviously, in the Celtics being able to use this. So you just mentioned the possibility that they could use a small portion of it to bring in a big. Is there any chance? Because if you're not using much of it, like you could just use a different TPE for that, as one that's going to expire down the road. Is there any chance that, and we've mentioned this sort of in passing on the show before, that the C's would use the TPE, pretty close to in full or, whatever, just to basically reset. And what I mean by that is bring in a guy that a team's trying to get rid of that makes, 15, $17 million, whatever it is, and flip them and get another TPE out of it and give your, kind of, it's sort of similar how they, like, the Hayward TPE became the Fournier TPE, could become the X TPE. You know what I mean?
That's tricky because technically your tax bill isn't calculated until the end of the year. So I think you
Which
could.
is why I was
I'm
thinking
pretty
about
sure.
that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do that and then get rid of it before it's too late, and then not pay tax. I believe.
Right.
Um, so like, yeah, you could do that. You could. But
I mean,
then
I
you're
know it's
putting the
easier
pressure,
said than done. Like, you got to find a guy to get, and you got to find a team to take that guy, or
and
or
you
some
might
other money.
and you might have to attach draft capital to get rid of that. Like, is it
Right.
worth it just to keep that alive? And then you're keeping it alive for the sake of eventually using it, right? But
You hope.
why? Like you're basically that's basically you saying we're gonna bring in another Josh Richardson now. Let's say for like as an example, it's not gonna
Sure.
be him, but like as an example, another Josh Richardson, so that we can then get another Josh Richardson. Maybe I don't really see the point of that, assuming the risk that it would take that you would have to get rid of. They have to use a pick to get off of it when teams see your leverage because they know you don't want to pay $90 million in tax or whatever. So I think you're doing that if it's a piece that you think will put you over the top at that point. I don't think they need that. Like unless KD goes to Phoenix and he's with two other superstars, or whatever, or maybe like Miami can somehow make it work. I don't really see a team that should be forcing the Celtics to do that at this point. I think the Celtics right now on paper are the best team in the NBA, or at least let's give them tied with Golden State for the best team in the
Sure.
NBA.
Well, they're probably the
Like,
deepest, like 1 through 10.
and they were just in the finals, so I feel
Right.
like fixing their number one issue from the finals makes them the best team in the NBA
Sure.
on paper. Yeah.
So when the Malcolm Brogdon trade happened, again, we'll talk more about Brogdon later, but when the trade happened, we were doing the show. Keith Smith was on, and the two of us, had the rare ability that we get on the show to actually react in real time to a deal like, any deal being made, quite frankly, but a deal of that magnitude was, pretty special to be able to touch on a little bit. But one of the first things that Keith said, and I agreed with it, was, one takeaway here is when you're sending out as many pieces as they did, obviously, but when you're bringing in a player as good and as valuable and as versatile and so on as Brogdon, especially making the money that he makes, that probably tells you they're not going to use the TPE. Well, now that we're a few days away from that expiring, potentially anyway, is that your belief? Either they're going to use a very small amount of it, like you touched on before, or this thing is just going to outright expire?
I think they're going to use a very small amount of it to bring in another big. That's what I expect. Well, I should say that's what they want to do, but I don't think anybody else in the NBA is getting traded in the next 3 days. So maybe they won't be able to find that thing that they're looking for. And there are some centers left on the market that could work for the vetmen, but I think from my understanding is they're clearly hunting right now for another big that's slightly better than the vetmen.
So assuming
I
that, I was just gonna say, assuming like Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell are not traded in the next 3 days, then, so you don't have all the dominoes and the trickle down effect of that. Who do you think they could be going after right now?
It's funny because like one guy I just kind of had earmarked was Kem Birch in Toronto. If Toronto was able to get involved with a deal
Mhm.
that just it's the guy's not making much money, I could see them tossing out like a protected second round pick to just get him to go over to Boston as part of that deal. Um, like Thomas Bryant was the guy that I was hearing
Yeah.
about from the get go, and I reported that they had an offer out to him. They were trying to get him to come on the minimum, and the Lakers they have a path for him to potentially start. He knew that there was no path for that whatsoever. The path for him to even play was not great. So
Mhm.
I think he made the right call. Like that was the right call going to the Lakers for someone who wants to like as cool as it would be to be a bench player who doesn't play get in the ring. Like he wants to get his career back on track. Like he was a
Right.
good player that's been killed by injuries and he wants to be playing again.
Yeah, he's still in
So
his 20s.
yeah, honestly, man, like I would look at the market. There's just nobody out there that really entices me.
In
You
terms of
know,
the free agents, you mean?
yeah, in terms of the free agents that
Well,
are
yeah, I mean,
available
it's
by the
Dwight
Celtics and so
Howard,
forth.
it's Boogie Cousins, Aaron Baines, who we already have indications that, as sad as that makes many Celtics fans, I realize like that's not going to happen. So yeah, I am
Yeah,
curious what direction they go in.
because I don't see them bringing in people that could affect the locker room structure. Like Brad has been so clear about this entire time, using the words like a team is fragile,
Mhm.
talking about adding without subtracting. That those themes came up again at the press conference the other day. This team is all about the chemistry vibe. We saw them last year find that on-court chemistry. They had good off-court chemistry, and that is what made them so good because they did not have the individual talent to stack up at the level that they performed. They were greater than the sum of their parts last year because of that stuff. And they
Mhm.
know it's really hard to carry that over multiple years. Like the fact that the Warriors had to get Kevin Durant to ensure that that carried over, and then it took them. I mean, health was the issue, but like the Warriors are like this remarkable paragon of organizational consistency and good chemistry, and they have the guys at the top that create that. Tatum and Brown are not at a level like where Steph and Draymond are to be able to really like make sure that culture is truly deeply instilled. This team kind of has a weird dichotomy of leadership where it's really Smart and Horford that kind of set that tone a little bit, and then Tatum and Brown are the ones that kind of push it forward. But like this team is not set up from a chemistry perspective where it can really handle somebody being a bad egg within the locker room or being a bad fit on the court and be able to survive it. And Dennis Schroeder was example number one of that.
Hmm.
Dennis Schroeder was a bad fit on the court for this team. He didn't play with the styles, the preferences, the inclinations that this team needed to have. They got rid of him and they flipped the switch. I mean, the switch was starting to flip beforehand, but it really flipped after that, especially when they replaced it with him with Derek White, who was like the exact example of everything they were looking for. So that's why I just don't see them going for a Cousins or a Dwight Howard. It just like there's just too much of a past there. And I don't think that role is going to be important enough to this team's roster that it's worth bringing in somebody that could be a risk there.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, and I'm perfectly fine with them moving Daniel Theis, especially considering he was, shy of a top 12 protected first round pick. He was, the most valuable asset that was sent away in the Brogdon deal, which really tells you something about, the potential steal that this could be if Brogdon can stay, healthier than he's been the last couple of years. But Tice, he filled a role. He knew the system obviously, and good enough defensively, could chip in here and there offensively. Didn't ask very many minutes of him. So as you look to replace that guy, you're essentially looking to, you're not You're not looking for another Horford or Rob Williams or even a Grant Williams or something like that. You're replacing Daniel Theis basically. So is there anyone on the market that does appeal to you shy of, well, it's going to be Cornette, or it's going to be Kevin Gelly, or it's going to be, somebody else from the summer league roster, or does it really kind of all come down to, like we were talking about before, a trade for a guy making a little bit more in the vet min?
I could see like I mean, as far as free agency is concerned, like Devontae Kaycock is out there. He I could see him working, except that he's only 6'8" or 7" or something like that. So it's like how different is that than Grant Williams as far as what you're looking for? Um, Luca Garza is in Detroit, I think, right? He's another guy that's interesting, but I think he's a restricted. So I would, if you're throwing the minimum at him, I could totally see Detroit just matching and keeping him. And then
Mm,
you look at the rest of the UFAs. It's guys like Tristan Thompson, who Brad Stevens. There's
yeah,
no way Brad Stevens is bringing it
and
back
they're
from
done that.
everything that I heard. I'll have to pull up a list just so you can remember the rest. But it's just like there's such few guys. I don't think Ed Davis is going to play anymore. Um, Greg Monroe, that doesn't fit what they're looking for in that position. Hassan Whiteside is, from a talent perspective, kind of fits what they're looking for, but like
Mm,
again, another, although he wasn't bad in Utah last year, but also Utah has not retained him. Danny Ainge has not retained him yet, unless I'm missing
right.
something. So, it's like that's everybody. Yeah, this list has Dwight Howard, Ed Davis, Whiteside, Garza, Thompson, DeMarcus Cousins, Kaycock, and Greg Monroe. This is Spotrack's
Hmm.
free agency tracker. That's literally all the centers left on the market. There's not really anybody there. Kamagale has a good shot at making the roster based on that, because I mean it's summer league, but like I do like a decent amount of what I've seen from him, and I did like his tape in the G League, so I could see him being a fit for what they're looking for, and a compliment to Luke Cornett.
And he has some NBA experience, obviously. He's a former first round pick at the Clippers. He's played a little bit in the league, at least, as compared to some of these guys that you typically see in summer league.